Hello and welcome to our Monday edition of UC TV. I'm going to be your host today, John Buckley, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of things. It can be a little in-depth conversation that is very broad, but we're going to do it with our community and we're going to talk this thing out. We have a lot of great guests on the show for you today. I have Tatiana Williams. I have Terrence Julius, Lamar McCullough, as well as Randolph Ward. And we're going to go ahead and have interviews with all of them, and we're going to bring them on and have a great community discussion. First, let me also say thank you to our sponsors, which are Gilead Ambiente Magazine, as well as Unity Coalition. First off, let me also give a shout out to our host, Samantha LaTroy. She is in Philadelphia. So she was scheduled to actually give us interviews today, but right now it's not the safest time for her to do that. So we like to say we love you. We hope that you're safe, and we'll be looking forward to you when you get back home to Miami. So first off, let me start off by saying these past few days around the nation overall, I think have been very traumatic. It's a result of, years of numerous incidents, oppression, discrimination, hatred, racism, among other things that have boiled to this point nationwide where we've chosen to make a stand. And now, not only are we being vocal, but unfortunately, it's coming off in other areas, which do include violence. I myself can't condone, and I'm not to say how anybody feels because we all go through different situations and we've all been through different situations throughout our lives. But I support the peaceful rallies and I support the peaceful protests because it's something that needs to happen and we need to see change come about. And it's now time to really put into action that movement. With that being said, let's get into our first guest today. So, my first guest, I'm going to bring on Ms. Tatiana Williams. She is the Executive Director for Trans Inclusive Group, as well as employee of the Pride Center. She's a voice for the community in general, especially the trans brothers and sisters, and she goes above and beyond to really help out the community and really be that strong voice that's needed at times. Um, she's going to be joining us so that we can get into a good conversation and some in-depth look at what's been going on. And then two, also, I'm going to be bringing on our sister from another mother, Miss Aryah Lester, who will be joining us from DC, and is also um, an exemplary sister friend of mine. Hey, Aryah, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing as well as can be expected within these current times and the environment that we're living under. But it's good to see you at least virtually.
Of course. That question is always within not only these past few days, someone asks us how you're doing. It definitely strikes many emotions and many feelings. Thank you for joining us. For those who may not be as familiar with myself, please tell us what you are up in DC doing and give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, I'm the deputy director for the Transgender Strategy Center that, is mainly just focused on trans liberation. And right now we're focusing on Black trans liberation more specifically. Not only because of the current state of things and things that have been going specifically with the murders of George Floyd and Tony McDade. Um, we really want to focus on Black trans individuals because if you focus on any person that's not the lowest in our little social ladder that we have here within the United States, whoever's below that is still gonna have issues. It's still gonna have less access to the system because the system isn't made for us. So being that Black women of trans experience with those three um, intersectionalities. I use the three block method, from 3 blocks away. The only thing you could see first from me or imply from me is that I'm Black. So, that's the first thing. And then just trans, when we look at gender rights, when we look at access to healthcare, to employment, to housing, it's just if we take care of that population, all the other populations will benefit. So currently I'm working with different national leaders and different national organizations to put together our demands, towards the cause of Black liberation with a specific focus for Black trans people, because that's going to work for all of us.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. And then I also see the lovely Miss Tatiana Williams. Thank you for joining us today. She is the executive director of Trans Inclusive Group, and then also with Pride Center of Fort Lauderdale. Can you go ahead and give us a little more introduction and in depth about what you're doing and being the awesome woman that you are? She might
Can
not be
she
able.
hear us? I
I
see
don't.
her.
No, I can't. I can't hear. I can
Okay.
hear.
All right. Well,
Give your introduction.
Um, you can hear me
yes,
now.
we can hear you.
I'm Tatiana Williams, the Executive Director for Trans Inclusive Group, and our group is centered around serving Black and Brown transgender individuals, whatever that looks like, from healthcare, from HIV care, housing, education, job readiness, whatever that looks like, to improve the quality of life for Black and Brown transgender individuals and not our non-binary siblings as well. That's what we do here. We serve Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So first, we're gonna talk on.
I can't shit out because I can't hear anything, so I'm just like talking.
You
Uh,
can hear me, right?
Say it
You
again.
can hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I'll translate anything John says over
Okay,
to you.
great, great.
all right. So this is live, so we're gonna make it work. Ask Tatiana if maybe she could possibly log out and log back in.
Yes, so Tatiana, try logging out and logging back in, and that might help your audio.
Okay, let me do that. Give me.
Okay.
In the meantime, we're also gonna bring on our other guest, my brother from another mother. I see him, Lamar McCullough, which is our own Miami local. He is with Empower You of Miami, and go ahead and give us a little introduction on yourself, Mr. McCullough. Wait, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. So once again, my name is Lamar McMullen, and I do work at Empower You Community Health Center located at the Northside Shopping Plaza, which is off of 79th Street and 27th Avenue, and we're literally right next door to the DMV. And who we service and what we service the population surrounding in 331424750 and beyond. And we literally like have awesome programs that would have you think of why not choose this community health center that's literally in the heart of Miami-Dade County, like especially during this time. So hopefully that answered just a little bit of what you was requesting, John.
Yes, perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
And I also see Tatiana. Can you hear me better?
Tatiana, can you hear John now?
Maybe not. So I guess her audio might just be having some issues.
Right.
Nonetheless, since I have you both on, let's go ahead and get into some of the discussion. Of course, over these past 2 days, around the nation, it's been uh, very traumatic and very uplifting at the same time. Um, and it's not just when it comes to Black people of color. Um, we've had senseless murders of trans far beyond, this incident that caused everyone to now take a stand and protest. And, what are your feelings on that? And how can we not only stand up for our people of color, but most importantly, one of our most neglected, our trans brothers and sisters?
Well, this has always been an issue, within our Black communities. We see a lack of support in executing justice for trans murders. Um, we see a lack of visibility on these murders when we look at the grander LGBT community. And so what we want to do is highlight that is specifically because of our Blackness is why trans people who are Black are getting killed. It's specifically because of that intersection and how that intertwines with the way that systems are built up today within the United States. I always tell people to look at your history. Policing in of itself is a modern concept. Before then, it was more of a localized thing where the victim and their families executed justice, or, it was kind of a village thing. Policing, as we saw it, as we see it now, it is based on a French concept within the 17th century or 1700s, either or 17th, 18th century. And when colonists came over here to the Americas and stole land from the Native Americans, there were no lawyers within that group. There were no specific politicians and people who really knew how to create a system for everyone. So the systems of policing that we see in the United States today was created by the same people who were for and supported slavery and taking out African bodies, from Africa over to this country to profit off of them. So, our Blackness is what's under attack, and the lowest denominator that person that you can easily victimize without any repercussions in many municipalities is the Black trans person. So the liberation of Black peoples and with Black Lives Matter, the core of that is looking at how policing and systems affect Black trans people.
Very well said. Thank you. Lamar, you want to go ahead and chime in on that?
So repeat that once again. Because she said whole mouthful too.
Well, basically,
that was great information, though. That was really, really, really great information. Thank you about that. So would you please just repeat the question?
My question is basically, we've seen murders happen among our Black people, but also we've seen senseless trans murders way before we've had this issue that brought about the protest with George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So,
what is your take on that?
so violence goes like a long way, right? And just being a part of the community, or not even necessarily a part of the community, but being family to my sisters and brothers of the trans community, like senseless acts has been taken, and it is a shame that we as individuals, and I'm just speaking from my own perspective, we as individuals don't fight hard enough, right? Because now, since I'm literally involved in the community and I'm an activist in whatever I do, like, I started to get my feelings attached to say that, what if it was me? Would you guys fight for me as well? And for those that know that I always stand as one. Like, I'm in this fight for the greater good, or whatever the case may be, because, like, we can have separate voices, because in separation we know that there's a divide. When there's chaos, there's a divide. So if we don't come together as one and stand as a whole body, then we can't really do anything. You know what Empower You does during the to recognize trans individuals, like, we will literally maybe light a candle, take a moment out to recognize our, what I call them, fallen soldiers, our kings and queens. Like, I call them fallen soldiers, and I respect them to the utmost, to say, you know what, like, they're not any different than I am. Because, to honestly tell you the truth, before I even got involved in the community, I didn't really know anything about it. But now, since I'm engulfed and I'm engaged and I'm in the center of this thing, I take heart to it, like they're literally my brothers and sisters from another mother or father. So I feel that pain. They always say that hurt people. If like, for instance, if Tatiana is hurting, I'm hurting. John, if you're hurting, I'm hurting. If any one of my audience members or is hurting, of course I feel that same struggle. So, and especially to die or get killed for senseless acts, like it just doesn't make no sense to me.
And I also see Tatiana. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can. I went to the computer. I got off. I was on my iPhone. I had to log in with the computer because I was like, well, let me try the computer to see if this does better. So it
Uh,
seems like it's working better.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, I would like to say, for me, what's important, and I want to go there because I want to have an intentional conversation. I want to be able to tap into what Aryah was saying, because I totally agree with everything that she said. However, we have to really dissect exactly what's going on here. So when we talk about George Floyd and what's happening in these current events, when it comes to the Black trans woman, people so often forget that before she was the Black trans woman, and excuse me if I offend anyone a part of my community, before she was the Black trans woman, she was a Black trans man, right? So she was a Black male, I'm sorry. So with that, and understanding that she was a Black male first, we have to think about, where does she end up in this spectrum? Because if they don't have no regard for the Black man, the Black trans woman don't have anything coming. That's the one thing that we have to understand when we are in the community, when we're navigating. It's not new to us when it comes to our trans sisters and trans siblings being murdered, especially as a Black trans woman, because we are so disproportionately impacted on the whole spectrum when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to housing, when it comes to education, when it comes to a lot of things. We don't have the access like our other counterparts. So for us, we have to do what we have to do to survive. So that puts us in a whole nother realm of not being safe. We're having to deal with these policemen. We encounter so many things dealing with these policemen, and people don't understand where we come from. And the thing is that people don't even connect with us as humans. So for us, this is compounding. What's going on in this world today, and that continuously happening with all these other people. Do you know how many trans women were in positions that had the policemen putting their knee on their neck? It just never made news. We've been treated like this for so often, and it just never makes news. So I think it's important that we highlight that. So yeah, I agree with everything that everyone is saying, but I think that as a community, what we're seeing, I think that speaks volumes in letting the community at large know that we have to have an eye-awakening moment, understand what that looks like as it relates to the community and the cry for the community. This community is sick and tired of being sick and tired. They are tired of people telling us that is something and it's a system for us that continuously to work against us for Black and brown people.
Correct.
That is so true. That is so true. Like the Black trans woman is being treated exactly how Black people were being treated before, the proclamation of the emancipation of slavery. When the interpretation of the Constitution, when it said man, was interpreted to be white man, and that Black people didn't even fall under that they were subhuman. Black trans people, Black trans women still are seen like that today in 2020. And that's what we need people to realize, that, attacks on Black trans people are attacks on Black people.
Hmm. I think one of the most things that's most hurtful, at least what I've seen, and when I see it, I'm like, how is it that our own Black people don't respect and love you as a trans sister, as a woman, regardless. They don't take the time, regardless of what they've been taught or what they've learned, because hate is something that's learned. Hate, hate. You're not born hating. You've learned it, or you saw it, or it's coming to you from something that you've experienced and you've been around. But at some point, you have to take the time and put yourself in your shoes. Like I could only imagine what trans brothers and sisters have been going through. I've learned from experiences that you've shared with me and stories that I've heard from Tatiana, or when I'm in other organizations and places, and they share some of their pain and some of their grief and some of the things that they've had to go through just to be where they are. And I'm like, is this not enough to make you see, you're hurting. You need the help. If we're in a position to be able to help you, why is it that we can't come together and do that?
Some people
Yes.
are deeply rooted in religion.
Absolutely.
They're deeply rooted in religion, and when you're deeply rooted in religion, they can't even get through the part of seeing that we are human. They don't get to that piece, so it doesn't even matter when it comes to our lives. I mean, you have parents that have disowned their children for just being within the LGBT community. Trans is a whole nother story. So it's just them not even wanting to accept, wanting to understand, not even wanting to educate themselves on what is this lifestyle looks like. So a lot of times when we are in the community and we're trying to access resources, or we're trying to do anything, some people just do not have that connection with our community, and specifically Black trans women. They just don't have that connection.
And
Yeah, I agree. I agree, because I hear my
As far as a
sisters
community,
talk about it all the
what
time
do you think are
of
some
what
of
they go
the next
through
steps?
still to the day compared to their earlier transition, like a couple of years ago. It's still the same thing. And once again, that goes back to say, like, we're still equal, like, regardless on what you identify as or who you identify as, regardless, like, we still bleed the same. Like, our skin tone is the same. It just may be a little bit darker or whatever the case may be, or a little bit lighter, but we still all bleed the same. Like, colorism is the thing. Racism is the thing. Still, I don't care what it is, what century we're in. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So, yeah.
mhm.
I miss
And
I
I
miss
feel that we need to look at how we feed into the same system too. It's
Absolutely.
like of how a person who has access to education and a corporate job and a good salary, and that person be a Black person, of how they look down on those that are under them. That and Black people, when we think about how that makes us feel, coming from someone of our own community, of our own skin, that's the same thing that we're doing to the trans community. We're feeding into that system, that the further away you are from a cisgender, heterosexual, white male, we're feeding into that hurt that then goes into the disrespect of those duplicities that go further and further from them. The cisgender, furthest from that is transgender. Male, furthest from that is femininity. Black, I mean, white, furthest from that is black. So, you it's like an equation. And if you look through that equation, then you realize that, it's the system has created a way for it to be easy for us to overthrow each other and bring each other down. And therefore, the system always wins.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. Hands down.
So, quickly, I want to go ahead. All of those points are phenomenal. I mean, you hear it first, and you're in this conversation with us on Facebook. If you're watching us right now on Facebook, please, by all means, share this community dialogue and invite those to listen, to be a part, because these are conversations that need to be heard and they need to be had. Um, we're all for it, and we're all about togetherness and being unified, because at the end of the day, they're no different from you and I. We bleed the same blood, and we're all alive. We're breathing, we're living, and you can't just continue to inflict pain on another senseless life. It has to stop. And the only way it's going to stop is if we take a stand together. Um, over these past few days, we've seen images of the media and the way that they portray a story. For all of you, for Tatiana, for Lamar, Aryah, what is your look on how the media portrays stories and how they make it come off to the public versus what really happens?
Well, we need to realize that the media profits off of sensationalism, and the media has gone further and further from subjective journalism. So, you really kind of have to have your ears on the ground, and, combined with the message that's being pushed by media. Don't look at it as the media said this is the truth. No, recognize it as the message that's being pushed by media. Then take information from people on the ground within those experiences to then make your final decision. Journalism has really changed, and it's really changed a lot under this current administration. Someone was just saying in another group that I was in earlier that, Trump actually poked holes, it made the holes visible in our journalistic kind of system there, and use specific things that are actually wrong with our system to help further along his agenda and his and kind of foster and turn hate and just people aren't together and there's no unity because of the way that it's built up. So, I mean, pictures can really, really, show 1,000,000 and 1,000 words, but those are all under interpretation.
So I think we might have cut Aryah off. Aryah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, you cut off a little bit. If you can just repeat that last end of
Pictures and videos are always under interpretation, and even eyewitness accounts, are always viewed and skewed by where that person's mental sensibility is. So make sure that you just educate yourself as much as possible with not only the information that you find online, but from your family and from your friends and from people who were there in order to then find out what action steps you can do in order to add on to the liberation.
Awesome. Next, I can hear from either Tatiana or Lamar.
I have to agree with Aryah in her statement. I have to agree with her. I think when it comes to journalism, I think that's what it's about. It's about sensationalizing stories. It's about capturing moments for they can sell their product. However, sometimes the moments are good and sometimes they do a bad job, but I think they do exactly what they're supposed to do. But the beauty about journalism and whatever that looks like, it's able to tell those stories when a lot of people can't see it. And when it comes to what's been going on now, I think the journalists, they may be showing the negative, but it is showing the impact. It is showing what's going on in our country. It's showing a whole lot. And I think that they're doing a great job exposing how the larger community really feels doing this, not only the pandemic, doing what's going on as it relates to racism, systemic structures that are in place that continue to keep us out of them. So I really think that they're doing a good job. I don't have an issue with journalists unless, you know, it's shedding a negative light on it. But I'll even go a little.
Hello?
You good?
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
I'll even go a step further, and not just when it comes to journalists. Like, we're going to be honest, it's all about the story. So we were just talking about COVID-19.
Yeah, right.
It switched from COVID-19 to COVID gone now. No, we ain't even talking about COVID anymore. COVID has completely left the building. Although COVID is still there, it's completely left the building. They done got on the other train. It's all about George Floyd now, with all due respect, but it's about the story. It's about the story, and not only just with journalism, but I see that within the community. So I'm tied to a whole lot of organizations and agencies that are tied to the work that we do in the community. So what I'm starting to see them pivot as well. I'm starting to see everything come about, how we're going to tie HIV into the racism that we encounter as people. Sweetie, that's been going on. You should have been tying it together. We didn't need George Floyd this to happen for you to tie it together. That's a given. So it's a lot of people are starting to fall in line with what is going on now. But this is where I have the biggest issue, because if you're going to fall in line right now, you're going to talk that talk and walk that walk, because we're going to hold you accountable. You want to come up and say, this is what you're going to do. Now what we're going to do, you gave us the opportunity. You opened that door for us to walk right on in it. And that's what I plan to do.
Exactly. I was watching. I was watching part of Lamar. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so definitely to piggyback on what I just heard the two young ladies talk about, even though I wasn't able to really hear your conversation or your question, what I can say about journalism, like, and Tatiana hit it definitely on the head when it talks about when we're capturing the moment. Like, and people always say, that pictures say 1,000 words or whatever the case may be. Like, that is so true, and it captures every moment. Like, and it goes back to way back in 1968 with so that goes all the way back to then. Sorry about that. That goes all the way back to then in 1968. And not only then, but it's still the same thing. So when we're talking about journalism, it captures everything. It highlights the effects of what's really going on. It gives a proper structure of what socializing looks like, injustice looks like, and all of that stuff. So we have to take accountable of what's being presented.
Correct. We do have to take accountability of everything that's being presented to you at all times.
Right.
With that being said, I was watching the Coral Gable rally, and we had to close our store early because they caught wind of the protest that was being planned, and just for the safety of our employees, our building, whatnot, our management decided to close early on Saturday. So as I had got home, I started to watch, I believe it was Super Cindy. She had went on live at the Coral Gable rally, and I saw the policeman come out and speak to the young lady who had organized or was one of the organizers of that rally. But I see in that he promised to have a sit down within 2 weeks, so that they can go over, I guess, make a plan of action. What do you think needs to happen going forward?
Group, we did put together a list of the demands and of actions that we can all take. One is to make sure that all Black people, trans and cisgender alike, are respected and honored. Right. We want to demand that the nation invests in Black lives, in an equitable concept, and to liberate and uplift those of us economically that have always had less because of the way that the country is structured. We want to demand that for all of your civilian review boards, be those in law enforcement or city commissions, that they require to have Black citizens, as part of that review board. Communities need to protect themselves. Black communities need to have protections, city protections on gentrification. We need to put laws and enact laws that keep the power within Black communities. We don't want another Black Wall Street to be burnt, like it was years ago. We wanted to demand the development of programs that prioritize the lowest, those who are most disproportionately affected. And but we demand, as far as for police, to stop the no knock policies that are around the country that are allowing them to enter our homes and kill us.
Awesome.
I agree.
Go ahead.
I agree totally with Aryah on this one. I couldn't have said it best. It's just that we need to make sure that these systems that are put in place, that they are there to help and protect. And we have to have those real conversations, right? Because I think there's a lot of conversations that we don't have. I think we have a lot of people that holds our value in their hands. I think I want to add, we have to have more intentional work done and funding that's led into Black and brown businesses, and specifically Black. We have to trust in what that Black leadership look like. We have to make sure that we have them at the table. And I'm unapologetic about how I move as a Black trans woman and how I advocate for Black folk. So when we're advocating for Black folk, I have to be specific, because a lot of times that term, people of color, we miss our Black people in that process. And some people feel that when they check that box with that color, that they encompass all of the community, and they don't. So we need to be a part of those conversations. We need more than just this equality. We need equity within the system, and that's what we don't have. When it comes to Black folk trying to gain access to employment, they're passed up for opportunities. They're passed up when it comes to financial advancements or getting housing loans, when they're trying to get into certain schools for education. All of these things that put us back as a people. And this has nothing to do with being transgender. Just our people as a whole are being set back and held back. And a lot of times, oftentimes, that a lot of our people that are supposed to be in place to help us, when you say people have been having this thing and they've been unapologetic about saying white now. So when you say you have white folks holding the key to our future or our destiny, there's a problem with that, because they're doing this thing where they give white folk money to go take care of Black folk, when you have Black folk that are in position to be able to take care of their people. However, the system does not trust, does not respect, does not believe in Black folks. So they feel that they can trust these white individuals with funding or whatever that may be in order to help us. And that's where we have the problem. We need to dismantle the system. The system in itself is corrupt. The system does not work for us, and you can see that in the outcry in the community. You can see that that's what needs to be fixed. These sit downs and these conversations, you all know exactly what is going on. It is capitalism at its finest. You know exactly what's going on. It's time for you to release that access. It's time for you to release that privilege. It's time for you to ensure that we get the adequate funding that we need in order to do the work that we need to do for our community.
Yes.
John?
Well said. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me also take a moment now to bring on Randolph Ward. Thank you for joining us today, Randolph. If you would go ahead and just give us a little introduction about yourself.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Randolph Ward. I just retired from a 15-year career as a professional ballet dancer, and now I am a choreographer and arts educator. And I'm here to share my thoughts and opinions on American history.
Of course. So, with you, Randolph, you lived in Germany. Um, give us a little bit about your experience of being Black and living in Germany.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before we actually started live. I lived in Germany for 6 years, and I've traveled quite extensively around Europe and Asia. For me, living in Germany, it was the first time that I was not a Black person first, but I was American first and then Black, which is very kind of interesting because I've always kind of had this sort of turmoil with the word American when it comes after Africa. That's why don't take that African away from my American, because I have this, because being American and Black person, you have all of these mixed feelings going into that. But yeah, that was kind of it.
And you were there specifically during the time of the Trayvon Martin incident.
Yes, yeah.
How did you feel, and how did that affect you being so far away but yet seeing what was happening here in the US?
I mean, lots of my colleagues in the company, they come from, Italy, France, Spain, different countries in Asia, were shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And I, of course, was not shocked. Didn't surprise me quite that much because it's been happening for so long. And I was born in 1982, which is not that long ago. So, yeah. And I actually said a joke to one of my friends. It was not a joke, but I said, God, I'm so lucky I'm living here because I don't have to worry about being shot for wearing a hood when it's raining outside. But also, I would like to point out that we also have to remember how policing started in America. There was a time when Black people couldn't even police, and they were being policed by white people. And also the police system, the police officers was used to terrorize the Black community also before. So there's a history of terrorism with the police and Black people in general.
Very good point. With also, look at Stonewall. Let's take it back to Stonewall. That was a riot in itself. That started our fight for our rights.
And it wasn't peaceful.
Nobody was there. You see the pictures, you see the proof, and you see how they started that fight in the bar against the cops interceding. What are your thoughts and your takes on how that relates to us now and what's finally come about?
It relates very well, but we won't have when you say Stonewall to me, we got to speak about those trans women, that Sylvia Rivera and that Marsha P. Johnson. We have to talk about how that started, right? So that's what it was once about, and that was ripped away.
Mm-hmm.
And Stonewall has turned into something totally different. And as Aryah and I mentioned earlier, and you got these trans women of color that was fighting hard for something. And now those trans women of color, have to fight. And we're still pushing tooth and nail in order to get our equity and our equality in this movement. That's sad for me because we still are in a position where it's something that we was a part of starting that we still don't get the just due and the respect of what that we need within this community. And that's important that we have to highlight that in that process. That's what I wanted to say about that.
And also, thank you, Tatiana. I am board chair of STAR, which is the organization that Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera created as a result of the Stonewall Riots. And, one thing in particular that's really noticeable is the erasure, the erasure from the narrative and the story of the Stonewall Riots. It was a riot. There was violence. Sylvia and Marsha had to curse and scream in order for their voices to be heard. They had to shove themselves into situations and into platforms in order to speak out. And even now, our organization, STAR, founded and made by them, goes largely unnoticed when we look at the National Park platform. It goes unnoticed when we talk about the story of Stonewall and the rebellion and the push and the move of LGBT rights that it really created and moved on with it. The silencing of trans women of color within Stonewall is the same way that the systems and policing tries to silence Black people today.
Awesome. And Randolph, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just like to add to what the ladies were saying. Yeah, I think there's always been a history of Black people starting something in America and not really getting credit for it, which Wall clearly points out. And I also think that the reason why transgender people sort of bother or are not supported in the Black community is because you guys challenge our ideas of gender roles. And this is, especially in the Black community, we're very sort of toxic masculinity and all of this sort of, you guys challenge that idea.
Exactly, our very lives do. And when we look at where did those ideals come from, that they are a subversion of what was in Africa, and from our cultures and from our peoples, the gender norms that we live up to, even the religions that we purport and utilize in order to foster alienation of trans individuals is something that did not come from Africa, yet all of us, all of our peoples here, every single individual on this planet derived from individuals in Africa. So, it's going back and looking at the culture and the history of Black and brown people and how intertwined we are in things that really matter, and looking at how the demolishing of those cultures and identities is why we see the things that we see today.
Thank you. I gotta look at the time because I see we have just a few minutes left. I want to thank all of you, Lamar, Tatiana, Aryah, Randolph. You have been amazing guests. This is a conversation that we're gonna continue to have because it needs to be had. These things need to be said, and these actions need to come about. It's been long enough that we've talked a talk, but we haven't walked a walk, and I think that's very vital to us moving forward together as one. Please share this conversation. This is our part one. Part two is coming up on Wednesday, and we may even have some more parts coming up further along. But thank you again for your knowledge, your voice, and thank you so much for just being who you are within our community.
John?
Before we leave, I'm going to have Lamar come on really quick. I know you wanted to say something, so I'm going to give you an opportunity.
I don't know exactly what happened.
Go ahead. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Lamar?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Go ahead.
So one thing that I definitely wanted to mention, Tatiana was speaking earlier before we brought Randolph on, something, and I quote from Obama, our former president. He says, "The bottom line is this: if we want to bring about real change, then the choices isn't between protest and politics. We have to do both of them. We have to mobilize to raise awareness, and we have to organize and cast our ballots to make sure we elect candidates who will act on reform." So that automatically tells us, like, we need to act. Like, just because of all of this is going on, the whole pandemic thing, and yes, the pandemic may not be happening right now as we speak, but it's still happening because there is no cure. They haven't found it yet. They're just lifting things and allowing people to do what needs to be done as of now. But still, we need to go out there and vote. We need to elect those officers. We need to go ahead and make sure that the departments represents everybody and not only one side of the fence, because this is an equal playing field. Even though society looks like it's separated or whatever the case may be, like, we need to go ahead and we need to cast our ballots. We need to make sure that we put the right people in office to make sure that the reform that we talk about on a day-to-day basis for us, for the social injustice, gets tamed, basically, or gets addressed. So make sure, once again, that's a little side note. Make sure that everybody get out and vote, like no matter what. Make it your duty.
Thank you, Lamar. And Randolph, go ahead.
Yeah, great. I just want to say now is the time that you should not be silent. You should try to live your biggest and brightest life. And I also have a quote from my favorite author, James Baldwin, famous Black author who was and gay, openly way above his time. He says, "The paradox of education is precisely this, that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he is being educated." So, with that, I'd like to leave. Yep.
Thank you again, Randolph. Last but not least, Tatiana, did you want to give any closing?
Yes, I think that we stay vigilant. I think the same way that we showed up for these protests and the way that we rioted is that we do the same thing when it comes to the polls. We need to make sure that we get those census completed, and we need to understand we not only need to just vote for our president, we have to vote for people that are in offices, because that's going to oftentimes that makes the difference as well. So educating our community on what that looks like, educating our ex-offenders, letting them know how to restore their rights, making sure that we have everything in place that we can change what this administration look like, and that could ultimately change what our community looks like.
Beautiful. Well said. Thank you so much. With that being said, I want to also thank our sponsors once again. That would be Gilead, Unity Coalition, and as well as Ambiente Magazine. Please share this conversation and tune in on Wednesday for part 2 at 4 p.m. live on our Facebook, and then it'll be streaming at 5 o'clock on YouTube. We love you all. We're here in peace and solidarity, and we are in this together. Let's continue to be a community, be one, and stand for our rights as people. We love you, and have a great Monday.